yeah, the guy in the red hoodie? And I said, yeah. And she goes, yeah, that was a ghost. And we both just kind of didn't talk about it anymore the rest of the way to work.
Well, that's one thing. I've had a couple truckers on. I've been in and out of radio since 1976, but I had a trucker one time on my show that was, I think it was like in Nevada or somewhere, on a back road. And all of a sudden, he saw this girl hitchhiking. Now, he claims he pulled over. She got into the cab, and he noticed that some of her clothes looked like it was like in the 70s, the style of the clothing. And she was saying that her boyfriend, they got in a fight, that he dumped her off in the middle of nowhere and took off. And, he was talking to her. And, they were talking for like 20 minutes, he claims. And, she said, I'm from such and such town. Well, that was the next town up the road. And then all of a sudden he went to ask her another question, and she was not in the cab anymore. And it really, upset him. And he stopped at the local police department and reported it. And, and he mentioned, I don't remember what the girl's name was because she gave him his name. He mentioned the name to the police, and he said that their jaws dropped and said they've had so many reports of people picking up this hitchhiker and then vanishing.
Well, I can promise you if that was me, that would have been the last trip through Nevada. I truck has always been a safe place. I've never really had anything happen in here, and I really hope to keep it that way because I can't imagine anything as scary as driving down the road and seeing something moving around in the bed or something. I don't want any part of that.
Well, I sure wouldn't. I don't pick up hitchhikers, number one, especially on a motorcycle when I'm not on a road trip. But and the guy sounded so sincere, when he was telling me the story. Now, it could have been, made up, who knows? But, he sounded really, upset even talking about it. So, but then I've heard other stories about people picking up hitchhikers and talking to them, and boom, they were gone.
Actually, one of my favorite ghost stories, you might remember this. It was one of the Ghost to Ghost episodes that Art did. And it was about the guy, he had just moved to Denton, Texas, and he was at a party and he met this girl. And she asked her to drive him home, and they stopped at this graveyard, and the headstone was knocked over. And she said, well, this is where I crashed my truck. It was a bad night. And he turned around, and she was gone. And that story had more of an effect on me as a truck driver than I think any I've ever heard, because I don't want to give anybody a ride anywhere anymore.
Well, I remember that story, and yeah, that would be, very upsetting because I don't know. Again, maybe it's somebody's stuck in a loop just going, over and over and over again. And could you imagine how many truckers probably picked her up and people picked her up? And then, how scary it would be to have somebody in the cab of your truck and you're talking back and forth for a while, and then all of a sudden they're not there?
Oh, I think I'd quit. I think that would be the end of the truck driving.
That, or you start drinking more coffee.
Yeah. Start drinking something after that.
Yeah, I mean, like I told you before we went on the air, I have a guy that's going to be on my show here in very near future, claims that, when he was in his truck, he saw a cow being pulled up in the sky. And he thought, okay, well, maybe it's a helicopter, maybe whatever, but it was nothing there. Just the cow going up. It just makes you wonder, all these paranormal weird things that happen. And there's a lot of things out there that people, when it happens to them, let's face it, right? You pick up some guy or girl and you're talking for 20 or 30 minutes with them, right? And then all of a sudden they're gone. Are you going to go around telling people what happened?
No, probably not.
I don't know how.
Unless you can find an outlet like this where it's safe to do so, I don't know that would be something I would discuss too much.
Well, if you went out and discussed it to the wrong people, couldn't you lose your license?
Oh yeah, you would be drug tested pretty much instantly if you talk to your boss about that.
Oh yeah, I don't know. So far that hasn't happened to me, and that's why I would not pick up any hitchhikers. So, But I mean, I remember Art's show. He had so many different truckers for the years call up with real, scary different type of things like Bigfoot running across the truck, or on the roadway, or ghost, or all that type of stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing that I've seen on the road, and I don't even know if this is paranormal or not, but it was enough to draw my attention. I saw what looked like a shooting star one night, but it was going the wrong way. It was not coming down. It was going up. It was green, and it was moving real fast. That's really been it, though.
Oh, wow. And how long you been a trucker for?
11 years.
Oh, wow. And how's your wife take it when you're out on the road all the time?
She hates it. She wishes I would find something else to do.
Yeah. Isn't it harder now being a trucker than it was? Or, I mean, with the laws and the rules and all that stuff? Isn't it a lot more regulated than what it was?
It's kind of a mixed bag. They got, they passed the ELD, which is the electronic logs, which also has an onboard recorder. So the whole time you're driving or when you're stopped, your computer is actually talking to that logbook and telling the logbook where you are. There's no way to falsify it.
No, not you can't. Like you used to be able to do. Not saying you, but I mean, I used to have some friends that were truckers, and they would, falsify the amount of hours they were, behind the wheel.
Oh yeah, it was like the Wild West out here before that. I did a lot of things I probably shouldn't have done. So from that aspect, I can see where it's a huge plus, because now you can't be pushed by your dispatcher or the broker to do things that aren't safe or legal. But at the same time, it's also sometimes really hard to find parking, and you can't change a line like you could in the logbook if you need an extra half hour to get somewhere safe to park. It's just, you got what you got, and that's how it is. You can go to off-duty driving, but that's going to be questioned if you get stopped. So it's a lot safer than it was, in my opinion, but it's also a lot harder, especially if you run during the day and like to sleep at night. That's why I usually run at night and sleep during the day. That way I don't have to fight for parking.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I think we got a caller on there. Caller, who do we have?
Yeah, this is James. How you doing, Nick and Gary?
Well, hi, James. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Even though it's 8 degrees outside, trying to stay warm.
8 degrees?
Yeah, 8 degrees.
Oh, wow. And I'm complaining because it's like 28 degrees out here.
Oh, I wish.
I guess time I checked, it was 65 out here.
Well, gee, I'm having a heat wave here. And he has a real heat wave.
Yeah, I wish. Wish we had that.
Well, hey, by the way, James does a paranormal show on my network on Saturdays. James, what type of questions do you have for Nick?
I got two of them. One, Nick, was you ever, throughout, as a youngster and even as a young adult, was you ever touched or scratched or anything by any of the spirits?
No, I wasn't. That's at least not that I can remember. I'm very certain that didn't happen, no.
The other question I got, whenever you reached around puberty, did you notice an increase in activity at all within, a 3 to 5 year period there?
No, it actually kind of died down, which I think is strange, because during that period of my life, I really kept to myself. Whenever I'd get home, I'd go right to my room, and I really, looking back, I feel like I should have seen more than I did at that point, but no, it kind of just completely died down.
I got to tell you, I definitely think that your grandfather is your protector, your guide, or he watches over you. And I also think you probably have some psychic abilities more than you think, which attracts spirits. I think that's why you'll see them in your travels on the road or whatnot. You're like a beacon in the night to them, and you probably don't even realize it.
Well, thank you. And if that's the case about my grandfather, I couldn't think of a better man to do it. He was a great man.
Hey,
right.
James, question. In the one house when he was 5 years old, he saw a man, like the old glasses they used to wear in the 1700s, in a like a nightwear, they used to wear. just kind of like walk through, and he saw it one time. What would that be? Would that be a ghost that's trapped, or is that a recording type of thing? But he only saw it one time.
I think that is like a residual, like a recording. I definitely, whenever I heard him say that, I definitely would think that's what that was for sure. I just do. And, because there was no, I think he said, didn't you say, Nick, there was no response to him? It was just like he was in his own thing?
Yeah, it was like he was on a loop. I mean, just from one point in the room to the other, just back and forth. That's all he did.
Now, let me ask you, where was this house at? Where was it at the time? What state was that in? Just curious.
That was in Pennsylvania, in a real small town called Pleasant Gap. It was, if you're familiar with college football at all, I live about 15 minutes away from the Penn State Nittany Lions. Yep,
and the reason I asked is because I just live in Ohio, so I know about Pennsylvania. There's a lot of granite and limestone. It tends to hold a lot of residual energy. That's why I asked where he was living. So that it kind of connects some dots anyway.
Well, James, you want to hang around on the phone line and we can find out more what happened here? We got like another 30 minutes here, and I want to find out what more strange things has been happening in the paranormal to Nick.
Sounds great to me.
Okay, so what else has been happening to you paranormal-wise?
Well, we moved into our new house, this farmhouse, and the first thing we noticed on the walkthrough, actually not on the walkthrough, we moved in, because when we did the walkthrough, we didn't really go up to the attic. But we went up to the attic, and when you go up there, it's this big open attic, but then what you don't see unless you go up is there's kind of this room in the back, and you can't see that unless you really go look. And so we were moving stuff in. I was putting things we weren't going to use right away up there. And we found there is like an old hospital bed up there. And it's really creeps my fiance out quite a bit. So with that said, sometimes we'll be laying in bed, and I wouldn't describe it as footsteps, but it's almost like there's something moving around up there in the attic. And then we have this light, and it's a red arrow, and it's got all these little bulbs in it. And for the first 3 months we were there, this thing would turn itself on and off all the time. We would kind of make a joke of it, well, who turned the light on, and nobody did. The kids didn't, we didn't. It would just come on by itself. And it's just kind of a feeling there. My fiance, she hasn't had a lot of experiences, but she's definitely felt a lot of stuff in that house, which is kind of, can't think of the word I want to use. It kind of backs up the way I feel, because she doesn't like to have those kind of experiences. I've said about doing some EVPs in the house, and that's been absolutely shot down. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But, so she's having those feelings as well.
Have you thought, Nick, of going up there with your cell phone recorder without her knowing and just, sitting in that room for a while and see if you get any weird sounds recorded?
Yes, I have thought about that, but then I've also thought, if I find something, how ridiculously hard it is going to be not to tell her, so it's better to almost not know.
Now, real quick.
Say, that it might stir things up, too. You might, and then you would have to explain that to her.
You mean the spirits up? You mean?
Yeah, it could.
Now, you mentioned up in the attic, there was, this big open space, but there was a room in it. And how big was it? Well, how big was the room?
It's not big at all. It's maybe 4 feet by 5 feet. There's a hospital bed in there, and there's also a really, really, really old school desk, and that's all that's back there. It kind of goes around. If you come up the steps, it kind of turns all the way around like a U-turn, and it's actually above the steps in the very back.
Interesting. I wonder if somebody was kept in that room for, some reason or whatever at one time.
You know what it sounds like to me? A lot of the old houses, and they had a lot of the families, if somebody had tuberculosis, they would put them in rooms like that, or they would, if somebody was punished, they would lock them in a room like that also. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. And if that's the case, that's going to hold a lot of energy in that room. You're probably drawn to it, I would imagine.
her best friend came over. She was showing her the house, and she took her up to the attic. And her friend, I don't know if she has any psychic abilities at all, but as soon as she went up